I have what I consider to be the perfect setup for starting seeds indoors. In this video, I'm going to break down everything I have and why each element is important so you have success in starting seeds this year. If you have anything to add, anything to correct, any advice for people watching, please leave it in a comment below and add to the discussion because I may miss some things. So let's get into it because I'm going to try to cram a whole lot of information into this video. Oh, and one more thing before we get into the setup. If you're a new gardener, it's okay to buy plants. Yes, you save more money overall, but this isn't something necessarily that you need to be doing in your first year. So for everyone else who is ready to start seeds indoors, and for those who want to ignore my advice, let me show you my setup. The first thing you're going to need is a space. Some sort of surface to start your plants on. It could be near a windowsill, it could be on a table, your dining room table, in a spare bathroom in the tub, or on a bookshelf. I have this wire rack right here, and it is where I start all my seeds. I think this is a perfect option because in this footprint right here, it is 4 feet by 2 feet. So 8 square feet. In this 8 square feet, I'm able to start hundreds of plants, enough plants to fill my 4,000 square foot garden. So I have 4 levels of growing space on this with my lights and everything else, and then up top, I have room for storage. The next thing you're going to need are lights. Sunlight coming in from a window is not going to be enough, but your lights don't need to be some fancy grow lights. Regular LED shop lights like this right here or a fluorescent shop light are going to work fine as long as they provide enough brightness and are positioned close to the seedlings. Now, full spectrum lights are ideal, and full spectrum lights mimic natural sunlight, covering all the wavelengths of the UV spectrum, UV and infrared, but they're not required. When you're shopping for lights, look for terms like full spectrum. Look for a color temperature of 5,000 to 6,500 Kelvin. That's going to be close to natural daylight and is really, really good for seedlings. And another thing would be the CRI that some lights have. That's just how color accurate the color temperature is. Look for something with 90, 95 or above. Now this light right here was marketed as a grow light. It has these nice reflectors on it, but this light up here is just a regular shop light. They're from the same company. I will link to them down below and everything that I'm showing here. And I'll also include complete notes on everything I'm talking about. Next, with your lights, you're going to need some sort of light hanger or way to adjust the light to get it as close as possible to your seedlings. I don't have a lot of good examples right now of things that have popped up because it's in February. I wanted to make this video before people really started getting into starting seeds indoors. But I have a few different ways to make sure that I'm raising and lowering these lights. One of the easiest things is to get a hanger that's actually made for it, or with this right here, I actually stacked up a whole bunch of these lunch trays, which I use for my soil blocks, to bring the pot up to the light. So you want to keep that distance because if you don't, you're gonna have leggy little sprouts. So that's because they're stretching out and they're reaching, trying to get to that light. So you're gonna know if you're not having enough light because they're gonna be leggy, maybe they're gonna have some discoloration, they're gonna be straining. So you want strong light close to the plant. And with your setup, you're gonna want some sort of timer. I have this timer right here, which has 4 spots that are timed for each of my levels of light, but then 4 that are just always on, which are good for other things that you may be using. Now this right here is sort of an analog one where it rotates around. You can get digital ones to set on an app on your phone, just anything to keep your lights on because your seedlings want or really need 14 to 16 hours of sunlight. That's one of the big reasons why sun coming in through a window is not going to be enough. It's just not enough time. So you really want to have a timer. That way you don't have to remember to turn it on and off because I'd forget. I don't know if you could tell, but I'm in my laundry room right now, and unless the dryer is running, this room actually gets a little cold, and we keep our house, on the cooler side in the winter to save energy. Well, with that, sometimes we need a little extra help starting our seedlings with a heat mat. A heat mat is a great way to boost that temperature up because a lot of seeds need a temperature threshold to get them to germinate. I'll include that right here on the screen for some of the most common things that you'd be starting indoors, but also, if space allows, I will include it in the description down below. But the thing with a heat mat is, once your seeds germinate, remove them from the heat mat or unplug the heat mat. They don't need that heat that whole time, only to help them germinate, because excess heat is going to stress them and can cause issues. Another thing that you could use though, let me go grab it, is something that I have but don't actually use. This. You plug in your heat mat into here, and then you have this little probe that goes into your soil that monitors the temperature, so it can keep it at the exact temperature that you need for germination. I've found that I don't really need it in here. These don't get too warm. Maybe if I had my house warmer or was in a different space, but this might be something that you need to ensure that you're keeping that proper temperature range. This next item is something that a lot of people don't think about, but a fan. I have two of these fans that I kind of move around to different areas to turn on and provide some airflow. Now that airflow does a few things. One, helping prevent fungal issues from too much humidity, getting fresh air moving through there, which is good. Another thing is, by moving the plants, you're going to help strengthen them. You know, they're inside, they're in this super controlled environment, so you want to make them sturdy enough for when they're outside and the wind's blowing around. So this will really help strengthen your plants by having the fan blowing on them. So I kind of move this around throughout the day or from day to day, move it to different levels, make sure all my plants are getting a nice gentle breeze as they're growing. Now that covers most of the infrastructure of my seed starting setup, and I could probably end the video there. But I want to give you every bit of advice for starting seeds indoors. So now let's take it to the next level of what you're actually going to be growing your seeds in. If you're starting off, go for something that is a sterile seed starting mix. Don't just go up and dig, soil from your yard. You can have a lot of issues there with weed seeds if you can't really identify yet what a plant seedling is versus something else, fungal issues. So before you get, some experience under your belt, maybe start with getting a sterile potting mix. Now with that sterile seed starting mix, I stay away from anything with peat. Peat has a lot of environmental issues with it. I make my own custom mix where I take cocoa coir, rehydrate that, and then do about 1 part perlite, 1 part vermiculite, add in worm castings, and blend it all together. I use a little bit of mycorrhizal inoculant, and then sometimes maybe add a dash of compost in there, but that is great, and it's for what I use for all of my seeds starting. So you get a good mix. And also stay away from those little peat pods that you add water and expand to. They're almost too small for growing really anything that you want to be planting out in your garden, and those outer coatings don't break down, and a lot of people plant them in thinking it'll eventually degrade. It'll eventually degrade, but probably not before your roots need to get out. So stay away from those. The next thing would be your containers. Right here I've got these fancy pants containers that fit neatly in here, but you don't need something like this. If you're going to be growing in a plastic container, reuse stuff. All right, here we've got a coleslaw container, a takeout container, more little takeout containers, a Tupperware from something my mom brought over. This was used for I don't know what, but we cleaned it out. So you can start in there. This you probably wouldn't do drainage, but you'd start in there and then scoop them out and pot them up. So, you can get creative with stuff you have lying around your house to start plants in. But one of the things that I've really found a lot of success in are soil blocks. So soil blocking, you would use the same mixture that I talked about, getting a soil blocker. This is a big one for a 2-inch soil block. I also have a mini blocker, which I've got some seeds and some little thyme has popped up in the last day, so that's nice. So I use those soil blockers, and some things I may pot up into a pot, but the soil blocker is a nice way to get a lot of stuff going without having to worry about a container. Yes, you do need to buy the soil blocker to get started, and also I put mine on these lunch trays, but I've found a lot of really good success and had super vigorous plants with the soil blocks. When you go to water your plants, you can use a little watering can like this. I like these little squeeze bottles. They're really nice. These are what I would do. To the degree possible, do something called bottom watering. not watering always on the top, but sort of flooding at the bottom. I do that with the soil blocks where I've got my little blocks in the tray, fill up water, allow them to soak it up, and then after maybe 3 to 5 minutes, any excess, I pour that off. So one of bottom water. Because of that, something like this, like a spray bottle, might be good for indoor tropical plants, but may cause too much moisture and fungal issues. So I wouldn't necessarily use a spray bottle. I've got some little seeds started, some strawberries and some celery. I've been giving those a little mist, but overall, not the best. And then there are these things, humidity domes. I hate them. Maybe hate is the wrong word. They're not great. A lot of times people leave them on a little too long, and with that excess humidity causes, again, fungal issues. You keep hearing me say fungal issues, but fungal issues can be a very big problem when starting seeds indoors because it will cause dampening off, which will kill your plants, kill your little seedlings. They're very fragile when it comes to fungal issues. So you may use them, but the second that your seeds germinate, just like with that heat mat, you want to remove it. You want to remove it. This is only for trapping in moisture and keeping them moist for germination. Anything beyond that, no. People often overdo it. I don't use them because I don't find that I really need it. So not something you need. Something you probably never considered. A calendar. A calendar of when to plant stuff. I'm seeing people in my local area already start tomatoes and a lot of things that it's too soon. It is far too soon to be starting that, in my opinion, where I am located. So go online. One of the best ones you can find is Farmer's Almanac. Go in, put in where you live. It'll pull up and give you all the times for planting based on your first and last frost dates. This is one from a local organization that has it spaced out of when you would start indoors, plant outside, the growing period, when it should be ready for harvest. So get a calendar to make sure that you're not starting stuff too soon. This video may be going long. I don't know. I'll see when I start editing it, but I've got more stuff I want to share with you. So let me quickly fly through some general seed starting tips. Pre-moisten the soil. Before planting, moisten the soil to avoid dry pockets, and especially if you're going to be doing something like soil blocking, you want it nice and moist. Plant at the right depth. Look at the seed packet and follow those instructions. And then also check the certain germination needs. Some seeds need light to germinate, so you're not going to cover them. They're just going to be right on the surface. Some things need to cold stratify, a period of cold. Not most of the garden vegetables, but some things like flowers like poppies and lavender will need that. Label everything. You're going to forget where you put stuff. I use painter's tape, and also I have little labels that I made from window blinds that we're getting rid of. Thinning. If you have cells where you've got multiple things and you want to thin them, rather than pulling them out, cut them at the base, because that pulling can disrupt the roots of the plant that you wanted to keep. Fertilize. Wait to fertilize until after the first true leaves emerge. The first leaves that come out are called cotyledons. Those are just when it's first emerging from the seed. Those aren't true leaves. True leaves look like little baby leaves of the full-blown plant. Once you get to that point, you can start fertilizing. I use Grow Big from Fox Farm, nice liquid fertilizer, and put that in and go about once every week in my watering schedule for my stuff when they're ready. And then hardening off. Once you've grown your plants and they're nice and beautiful and they're ready to go outside, you cannot go from inside to outside. You need to do something which is called hardening off, where you're bringing your plant out for a little bit during the day and then bringing it back in so it can acclimatize. Even if you've got super nice lights, you've kept them close, the sun is a whole lot more harsh. You've got that wind, you've got everything that's going on, so you want to get them ready to go outside over about a week. Take them out maybe in a shady area for 3 hours, then bring them in. Then take them out for 5-6 hours, then bring them in the next day. And then back and forth until you get them ready, so you don't put out your plant that you've loved and cared for maybe months, and then you put it out there and it dies. So don't do that. What did I miss? I tried to pack as much information as possible into this video. As I was writing it, I thought that maybe I could string this out across 2, even 3 videos. I didn't want to do that. I wanted a one-stop shop. I talked quickly. If I missed anything, let me know in a comment. If you've got a piece of advice for those people starting seeds indoors, let me know. Again, this is for starting seeds indoors. I wish I had a greenhouse. I wish I had a much larger space. I said this is perfect. It would be better if it was bigger. But for me, this is about the perfect setup that I can fit into my house. Let me know about your growing setup. What are you growing? What are you starting? What things have you learned that work well for you? I'd love to know. My name is Tyler Lloyd, and I wish you the very best. Happy growing.